lost 1,900 square miles of wetlands since 1932. We're the fastest disappearing landmass on Earth. The Barataria-Terrebonne system is the fastest disappearing landmass on Earth.
40 years ago, I bought this property, and there was a lot more vegetation. What are you looking at? There were a few potholes, but for the most part, you could get out there and you could actually walk on it. If you were careful and knew what you were doing, you could walk on it. There is no way in the world that you'd attempt to get out there and walk today. The saltwater intrusion is coming in, and it's just degrading the property. We're a delta that no longer functions as a delta.
Everybody knows the Mississippi River built us, but it laid down ridges. The Mississippi River flooded its banks and deposited the heaviest stuff right adjacent to the channels. And the water continued to flow out, and the lighter particles stayed suspended and eventually settled out, and those are our wetlands. We've been sinking for 10,000 years. It's just that the annual flooding of the Mississippi River has in the past restored some of that land, some of that elevation. We've cut off that cycle by building levees along the Mississippi River, but we've also built locks and dams in the upper watershed of the Mississippi River. So there's no longer any sediments even coming down the river, so even if we didn't have these levees, we would still have land loss.
At one time, the wetlands in South Louisiana were just considered wasteland. Nobody really cared about this area, coastal Louisiana. Everybody that lived here were considered, ignorant, swamp people who just didn't know any better. There were Native Americans who, were here, and Cajuns who ended up here because the Indians embraced them. And once natural gas, once petroleum products were discovered in these wetlands, that's when they became valuable.
If you look to the southeast coast of Terrebonne Parish, we had the largest oil field in the world at one time at Bayou Island. And the world wanted, and particularly the United States of America, wanted our oil. And canals were dug and everything was done to get into the oil and to get to the gas and move it all over the country and share it with everybody else. And then that great zeal for getting the oil out, there was nobody looking to make sure those canals that were dug were closed off, and no one was there to think that anything could go wrong. Everybody assumed that nature would take care of itself, but the end result, the oil and the gas was taken, and most of it, of course, went all over this country, but yet there's not this national feeling of wanting to be part of solving the problem that was created to begin with for their sake.
If you live here, you depend on our wetlands. We tell that to people all the time. If you have a house in Morgan City or in New Orleans, in downtown New Orleans, if you have a business, you depend on our wetlands to allow you to live there or to work there.
This was once one uniform, beautiful section of marsh. And when they want to explore and drill for natural gas and oil, they take a dredge and they just start chunking away at the bank, and they cut what they call a company canal, a rig canal, or a pipeline canal. But the reason that digging a rig canal is so detrimental to the marsh is because what you've done is you've taken like a knife and you just cut straight through the middle of this marsh. And our marsh here depends on the daily tide. The tide comes in, bringing nutrients, and when the tide flows out, it takes the toxins with it. And so when you chop up the marsh like this, you change the way the water flows across this marsh. And what was once one big beautiful marsh is now cut up into pieces, and you can actually look out and it may be totally different on the right and left now than it was before. One side of the marsh may be very, very healthy, and the other side may be dying.
I'm here because even though I'm in Chicago, I am related to the people here. I'm related to the people in China. I'm related to the people in Syria, Sudan. When we have the opportunities to step out of our comfort zone, me being the city of Chicago, and move into somebody else's comfort zone, the possibilities are unlimited.
I was reflecting on the boat ride over to come and work here today. As we were going through the wetlands, it seemed like it was so plentiful, and it went on and on forever. But that's not the case. And it's deceitful because it lets you sort of get a false sense of security that we don't need to do anything to protect the wetlands or replenish the wetlands, when indeed we do.
When I think about my experiences growing up as a Homa, I specifically think about the environment. As a kid, right down the road over here, when I was growing up, my grandpa would make things in his shed, and we would spend Sundays pulling things out the ground, making teas. So it was very much a part of who we were, the environment, the land, the grass. My mom would always tell us that my grandfather told her that everything that was on this earth is here for a reason. So we respected things and we used them as purposely as possible.
I'm born and raised in Terrebonne Parish. Been here 53 years. I plan on staying here for the rest of my life. My sister and I would put our nets in a wagon. We'd pull that wagon up and over the levee through the woods, get to the marsh, set out our nets, and while we were catching crawfish or while they were coming in, we'd go and pick thistles, and that was our salad for after we had our crawfish.
For many, many years, all these coastal wetlands have been a working wetland. It's not that people so much choose to live here, this is where their heritage is, this is where they were born. They're third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation fishermen, trappers, and so everything that they do is closely tied to the area in which they live. And so with the disappearing of our wetlands, also we see the disappearance of a culture that is tied directly to those wetlands.
This is called Bayou. It was an Indian community south of here, about 3 miles, and that's where one of the very famous Anatole Martin, one of the missionaries, came to. But now that particular community, it doesn't exist anymore. It's open water now. To see what's happening, it's like watching a part of life dying right before you. And I can tell you, when I think about Île-à-Jean-Charles and Pointe-aux-Trembles, and I see a Dulac being on the front line by the Large, and there's an effort to save it, it's really a life.
They say Bayou water runs in our veins, and I think that's a very important part of indigenous people. As a mother, it's very difficult. I think about my grandfather living on what was a barrier island, and I hear my mom tell me, there were sugar plantations and there were plantations there. And it's very hard for me to imagine that when my daughter will be my age, what will she say of the place where I used to go and jump in the bayou or go watch the boat blessing or just watch the alligators pass?
I think for the foreseeable future, Louisiana is going to be the test for all other coastal communities throughout the world to see whether or not they're able to survive in the distant future.
Is it too late? I don't think so. I don't think it's too late. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I thought it was too late. I think there's still very much hope. We can still turn the tide.
Everything we do matters. You have a voice, you are a people, you have power. Where you buy gas matters, where you eat matters. The people you speak with and love matter. And if we can convince people about the truth of that, we can get things done. We can save this coast, and we can have Louisiana as we know it and love it exist for many generations to come. We've been charged with taking care of this planet, and that takes effort. If we ignore it, it gets ruined.
Alors c'est Caroline, pour avoir des bons temps. Alors c'est Caroline, pour manger du gombo. Yeah, maman, Caroline c'est trop mignon. Yeah, maman, Caroline c'est pas ma femme. Oh yeah. C'est Caroline, pour manger du gombo. Allons, Caroline, pour avoir du bon temps. Yeah, maman, Caroline c'est trop mignon. Yeah, maman, allons chez Caroline. Oh yeah.